Oh God, we're live. All right. Welcome once again to C9K, the show where we talk about containers, cloud native Kubernetes, and all of the following trends within cybersecurity, WTFs, big spenders, and we dive deeply into some tech, or at least we try. My name's Steve Jaguar.
And I'm his co-host, Mike Foster. And this week, got a packed lineup. MGM got hacked. We'll be talking about why people leave DevRel. We have two big spenders, and I'll be giving a tool time on Topaz. That's not Bombshell. And we have a big explanation why. Welcome to the show. Yes, welcome once again to the show. This is C9K, Mike Foster with Steve Jaguar. We are not live. We were recording this the day before because Steve has some disc golf that he thinks is more important than spending my Friday morning with me. Yeah, it's okay. I'm not pissed off at all about it.
Hold on. The karma's a thing. I went for a practice round on Monday and I stepped on a wasp's nest. So right now my calves are bright red, and because I got stung like 7 times on my calves.
Oh, so okay. I feel a little better now. Thanks for that. All right. Well, you can tell Steve, let us know how mad you are that Steve's leaving us on Fridays. But again, all the links are in the description below. Hit subscribe so you know when we're live. We promise to be live more often in the fall. That's between a mixture of events, reInvent, KubeCon, all the fun things that we go to, and you'll get a wrap up of those as well. Until then, we're capping off the few good days left in summer here, at least in Canada where I am, with some packed news. Should we just get into it?
Let's do it.
All right. Hot off the press.
All right. Top story tonight, in a way. MGM Resorts. This is an understatement. Slot machines go down in cyber attack on firm MGM. It's more than that. Basically, the entire freaking thing got shut down. They pulled the plug. I heard from people on the ground. They were checking people in with clipboards and printed out spreadsheets. So if you planned your Las Vegas holiday for this time, I hope you like the pool.
Yeah, I think slot machines go down in cyber attack. The whole system's down, but I guess they're still checking people in. So technically the hotel isn't down, but just you can have a massive line out the door. Well, I mean, at least Bellagio is making a bunch of money off this. I think the rumor mill, or what I read, was somebody went to, so there's an IT help desk on site, and somebody went to LinkedIn, figured out who that person was, and then just impersonated that person while calling in to say, hey, I need help. I need access to my accounts, blah, blah, blah. And they managed to get the credentials, and then they got access that way. That's apparently the rumor.
I heard that too. Yeah. Classic social engineering blunder. But then in the end, geez, it doesn't sound that hard, did it?
What, gain access? I'm just shocked that there was no sort of break glass, that somebody was able to access, maybe, I guess, shut down the entire network. I'm assuming all the IoT devices probably had that sort of access.
Yeah, well, at least they had some form of runtime monitoring and potentially data loss protection, because MGM got hacked 2020, and 10 million people's details got out. So they haven't reported actual loss yet. So
but maybe it is early. It's early.
It was very early.
So check back later for more details. Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of, I guess, well, not really the same, but we've mentioned this on the show a couple times. Authentication on the internet. So this has come up with the US government asking big agencies to bring authentication and authorization to their websites. This has already been a thing in your devices. You have tokens that are associated with it. if Apple requests to say, hey, where are your devices and find my device, they can point you to the direction of where your devices are without Apple knowing which ones are yours and where they are. That's a very poor breakdown. But basically, private access tokens, they're registered to your device. It allows Apple to know that you're an authenticated Apple user associated with your iCloud account, for example, but they don't know everything about who you are and what you're doing. The move is to bring this to the internet. So Google, all the government agencies, you go, you sign in, they know, okay, you're signing in from this computer at this IP address and you have this token, but we don't know exactly who you are. We just know you've been authenticated. So I just say this because we've been chatting about where the internet's going. And when I've told people about this, they seem to get really freaked out. It's like, it's already kind of around. It just it does depend on how it's implemented, obviously, by entities like the government, but it's not a new concept.
It's not new. No, it's like this endo. Shit. Is it? I don't know.
Yeah, it also allows further applications. Like, it's not saying that you have to be, let's say, authorized to use Google. But if you're unauthorized and maybe associated with DDoSing or associated with certain actions, it's easier to identify those bad actors and kick them off platforms. That's also one of the upsides of it. The downside is they're going to have logs of all this stuff, all the authentication. Sure. So while Google doesn't necessarily, or Apple doesn't necessarily know your devices and what you're doing, you have to hope that they don't have to comply with federal subpoenas and things of that sort. Because I don't know the law around that one. Just because they don't collect the information doesn't mean they're not pointed at and told to summon it up. Somewhat of a random tangent, there was a lock company in the US that got in hot water for this because they have these big safes and they keep a record of all of the safe serial numbers and the codes that come with them. And when pushed by, I think, the FBI, they gave up the code to one of the safes, and then people were freaking out. And so then they said, like, okay, we're not going to keep numbers anymore, but if you get locked out of your safe, we can't help you. So it's like,
yeah, fair enough.
It's a funny trade-off. All right, on to the next topic, Neocyclone.
Yeah, Neocyclone is another, let's call it an emerging and a very interesting tool for visualizing via a Neo4j graphing mechanism, an SBOM. Like, it doesn't have a fancy logo. How does it work? It's a parser that gets relevant data from a Cyclone DX, not SPDX or SPDX, whatever you want to call it. And when you run it, it gives you a little local browser and it gives you a visualization. I think they went a little overboard on this example visualization. This is almost like looking at Kubernetes dependencies, but giving you something visual on what you can do. So this is Juice Shop. If you know Juice Shop from OWASP, it's an intentionally vulnerable Node.js app with a ton of dependencies, and they ran it and they gave you this visual you can click through. I think it's just kind of cool. We were talking already about SBOMs and the ability to traverse or perhaps even interrogate, right? So lots of utilities around the navigation of complex SBOMs visual. Neocyclone may come up in a tool time in the future, but this tends to be how these things happen, right? We discover them. There's only 16 stars, 0 forks, a couple of people watching it, of which one is me. But yeah, not bad.
Yeah, and always test out your 16-star applications maybe weeks in advance before trying to give a live demo, because you will run into issues. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Things do happen.
Yeah, we'll test that one.
Yeah. All right, on to the last general news of the day, unpinnable actions.
Full disclosure, this is written by Yaron Avital. He is somebody I work with. He's in the research team over in Tel Aviv from the recent Cider acquisition at Palo Alto. Kind of just shedding light on the fact that he's claiming that Yaron, along with Essie Greenhalgh, did some research that was presented at both DEF CON B-Sides this year about how truly vulnerable a GitHub action really is, because GitHub actions are essentially applications. They have dependencies, which are other actions, which depend on other actions, and the usual turtles all the way down. Where does it end? And we're often given advice like what we demonstrated. If you remember, Foster, we did GAT, right? GitHub Action Tool, and it replaced the pinned version 1.31, whatever, with the shop. And you can see, and you're like, yay. I'm not going to be subject to a random change of this particular dependency with the same tag. So I feel I have some provenance, right? Present. And he did some research going back and looking at some major projects showing that actually most actions have, whether you pin them or not, depend on actions that are equally unpinnable, and a variety of ways of bypassing that via an attack surface. So there is, both in terms of Docker actions and composite actions like that, it goes into quite a lot of detail into the way, even in terms of the code that's within an action has unpinnable elements. So it's largely saying, like, there's some good stats here. 32% of the top 1,000 started GitHub actions are unpinnable, meaning it doesn't matter if you pin them, there is vulnerable dependencies within those pinned actions. It's not saying don't do it. Let's not take this the wrong way. You should pin when possible, but it's just pointing out that as a culture, we're not doing this anywhere near enough. So what's your best practice against? It's got some good advice down at the bottom, but it's just shedding some light on, I think, not just GitHub actions, but just dependencies generally, saying, let's get with the program and stop using version numbers, or let's say latest, and start being better with this kind of thing.
Yeah, watch out for those community GitHub actions where it's like, Ubuntu 16 or 18 or whatever it is, and scoped just for what you need.
And that on that bombshell, sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, you got another hot take coming up, right? It's getting spicy.
Leads me to my hot take. Let's do it. Ooh, two-face. All right. So off the back of the idea that GitHub actions, shocker, are unpinnable. But the reality is, if you look at the obsession, let's say, that we have right now with SBOM's software bill of materials and the visualizations and the information that we're passing about, it's in a way polishing the brass in the Titanic, right? We have this information, but what are we doing with it? Largely, at the moment, a whole lot of nothing. Really, if you look at any, let's say, package manager or GitHub action, if you've got the tools and you've got the visibility to trace your dependency tree far enough back to find out where it reaches a dead end on every single path, you'll realize very quickly, for example, if you go to a website like deps.dev and you look at the Kubernetes dependency tree, it's already crazy. It's way bigger than you can possibly handle. And to track whether your heavily pinned actions or your heavily pinned dependencies within your package manager or in your GitHub actions, how deeply are they? Is everybody doing it? How deeply does it go? I would argue that even though in the article we just saw that, I think it was 32% of the top 1,000 projects are unpinnable, I'm amazed it's that low. And that's only because it's GitHub actions, probably because dependencies within GitHub actions don't run as deep as package managers. The reality is, if you look at a package manager, the basic node package.json, this can go 7 to 10 to 12 levels deep in terms of dependencies, in terms of transitive dependencies, where we are not pinning. We have the ability to override the versions at length. And so regardless of whether we're doing it at the destination, at the top level, there's just not enough people doing it at every level. And I think at the moment, there's just a whole lot of hand waving and sound and fury signifying nothing in terms of unpinnable. I think right now we should just assume everything is unpinnable generally, and just all of us get with the program on pinning everything, whether that be dependencies, or whether that be GitHub actions, and realize whenever we have dependencies, we have to be accurate in what it is we're talking about. And that is my hot take, keeping it quick.
Yeah, definitely kept that pretty quick. It's spot on. Nothing too crazy. Mild spice.
Don't like it? Hit me in the comments.
Yeah,
well,
it's spicy enough. Extra controversy coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Extra controversy coming up in the WTF section. That's why we slowly ramp the spice meter up as we go through the show. Steve, you found this one. This is off the back of the Terraform business source license that we've talked about a few times.
What?
Right?
No, we're doing this one first. We're gonna do this one first.
Right. Okay, take it away.
Major technical investigations, the Storm 0558 key acquisition. So Microsoft published a blog post, which actually I have here, mitigates China-based threat actor Storm 558 targeting customer email. Now this seems innocuous, but the reality is a debug dump that should never have contained a key that could get an MSA key that could allow anyone to forge access to Outlook.com was in a dump that ended up in a public debug that a major threat actor got access to, had the key. They had this key 2 years ago and were able to forge access to Outlook.com. They have been able to do this since. Now, they are saying in the blog post that they've only noticed access earlier this year, as they've noticed. The reality is, if you look at some of the number of times they've said, and we fixed this, and we fixed this, like this crash dump had a key, but we fixed it. They keep saying throughout this article, and now we fixed it. Identified a race condition that allowed a signing key to be present in crash dumps. Oops. Prevention, detection, and response for key material erroneously included in crash dumps. Maybe you should check them. Enhanced credential scanning to detect presence of signing key in the debugging environment. All these things that they have learned, like major things for an organization the size of Microsoft, that they're only just now fixing, and almost playing down the fact that this is potentially the biggest breach ever. Like, really, it could be, because they're only just looking into it. Like, if you had access to sign yourself into Outlook.com and get access to anybody who had email on Outlook.com, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of information. Everything you do, your entire life, is on probably one major email. Your two-factor authentication, your bills, your life, your deepest, darkest secrets. To think that some actor and think this is being played down right now, to me, alarms me a lot. I think this is a huge F-up on the part of Microsoft, and we are potentially only just seeing the beginning of this news.
So what comes next?
The release of how much information. We haven't seen how much information has been released. What access did this China-based threat actor actually get? I haven't seen anything really detailing that.
Yeah, this kind of flies in the face of that. What was the government mandate that said you had to disclose a hack within 4 days for the stock market to move? It's like, well, what if you find out about it 2 years later? Do you get charged for that?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And they disclosed the hack and the fact they're saying they're fixed it, but they haven't disclosed what the ramifications of it were.
Yeah. And obviously there's a provision in that document for national security, so I'm sure that will get evoked a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you kind of don't want to, but you kind of do.
Yeah, that is crazy. I'm gonna be following that one. Speaking of the ones that we're following, and even though I jumped the gun, the next one has to do with the Terraform business source license change. All right, what'd you see?
So this, I pitched from LinkedIn. The particular guy who seems to really be monitoring all of this. Detect infrastructure drift with unmanaged resources with Snyk IAC. Now, I wish we were announcing this, but we're not. We're actually announcing the fact that it's deprecated. Drift detection of managed resources will be going away as of September 30th. Now, the date on this is May 9th, 2022. The reason this is interesting is because with the change of licensing Terraform, I can only presume, now this is a bit of inferred, or conspiracy theory, right? It's a little coincidental that this showed up after the change of the license. And while myself and many colleagues thought this, somebody had the wherewithal to go to the Wayback Machine to, end of July, just to make sure that deprecation notice was not there. So just to say, when did this happen? And it's exactly happened in line with the change to BSL within Terraform. And it's a little like, they're not saying it outright, but it's like, is this the first of the victims of the license change for Terraform. What do you think?
First of the victims, yeah, the small features that people have added on using open source Terraform will go first, most likely, as products decide if it's financially useful or not. The bigger players, it's going to take a while. We're going to see how much this is going to squeeze. But the other thing is, I think a lot of bigger companies might be looking at the valuation of HashiCorp and saying the valuation is ridiculous. So two things have to happen. Either they have to start making money, or they're going to have to start shrinking their stock in order to get acquired, just as a company. So their next moves over the next few years are going to be dictated by those two outcomes.
Yep.
But very neat. On to the last of the WTF, and something that we've somewhat mentioned in passing, let's say throughout the duration of the show. DevRel as a job.
Yeah.
You stumbled across this one.
Well, I stumbled across it because of Dan Lawrence Chingard, obviously. He is in support of this DevRel video, which is zoomed down. It says, this is Ali Diamond saying why I left DevRel with a pouty face there. And Dan kind of summarizing some of the issues with developer relations, some of the trends. I like the fact that he characterizes KubeCon as DevRel's pitching to DevRels. There it is. DevRel's pitching to the DevRels. He goes, not too far from the truth, because a lot of people that go there and that get paid to go there and are influencers there, it's a community of people who talk about the industry as opposed to, the few people who do it. And particularly the talks. The talks are often very connected people within the DevRel space that know what's going on. What he does add, and she doesn't add, I like this, is that blatant vendor pitches have always been banned, because companies pay people to work on open source projects. I mean, come on, Red Hat is heavily open source focused. It's very hard for Red Hat to talk about open source and not somehow make it relate back to what they actually do. Same thing with Bridge Crew when we talk about checkoff, right? And yet they call you out and they don't let you talk there. And is that necessarily smart? And there's a little bit of that. But then we get into her complaints about why I left DevRel, and I would love to show you the entire video. But what I did was I wrote down throughout the video, she puts on the screen what she's talking about, but she only put on the screen 8 of her 10, so I only have 8 of them. But I think some of them are pretty good. The first one being, and I don't know how you relate to this, because you're not technically DevRel, right? You're technical marketing, right? You sure. Escape the realm, because you're not expected to write code and be part of the developer community, whereas I am. Mm-hmm. And she was like being told, go out there and make videos and don't write any code. And she's like, well, what? I'm my knives aren't staying sharp. So she didn't like that. Mm-hmm. But I thought was totally accurate. She's saying companies who hire DevRel don't actually know what they want to do with DevRel. They feel they need one, so they get one because it's cool to have a DevRel, and DevRels get talks at KubeCon or DevRels get talks at events, and somehow you want one. So it's not a real role, and I can see that personally. I can definitely see that certainly within larger companies. She got frustrated with having her online presence be way too connected to her actual job, which is actually, I think, part of the role. Yep. Some people like me are very careful about what I put on Twitter, and then other people within DevRel say the most blatantly, I don't know, controversial stuff on Twitter, and that's their approach to the exact same role. That's interesting. That's the basics, like no one knows a good strategy for DevRel. That's true. DevRels are the first people hired when it's cool to have one. The first people fired when you don't know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. The one I like the most is that she referred to personalities and the DevRel grift. Spicy take. Spicy take. It's not 100% wrong though. Nope. There's a little bit of personal sales that goes into this industry,
like any job.
Like any job, yeah. And then the last thing I thought was absolutely correct is that you're in a technical role where you have to know the technology in deep depth, but you don't get treated like you know it. You get treated like you're in marketing.
Yep. Those are all fair complaints. You're not engineering, you're not in marketing or sales. You kind of float in between everything, but that's kind of what you get paid for.
Yeah, but you can see she comes from a coding background. So she's like, yeah, but I know this stuff inside out. And they're like, yeah. Probably also not to like, that's probably controversial or hot takey. Because she's a woman, it's worse.
Of course.
Yeah.
That does all make sense. I'd say the grift part is very interesting. I think the part about people not knowing what to do is correct. I'd also argue that your job as a DevRel is to set what makes you successful. A lot of developer, and it's different if you're an engineer and you come in and you go to marketing and sales and you say, what do you need from us? And you're the person that bridges the gap between engineering and a marketing event or what sales needs. That's sort of like you're stepping your toes into the role. Somebody who does that more as their full-time job should be able to actually say, okay, these are the outcomes I want. I want to be on 10 customer calls every week. I want them to have good outcomes. I'm also driving certain events, and I'm helping the community space funnel issues and create the backlog. Like this is what makes me successful. Yeah. If you can't articulate that as a DevRel, I don't think that you understand the job you're doing either.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Right? Like part of it is to understand that really you're driving business into technological outcomes. If you're not doing that, you're not really good at your job. If your job is just to be at Kubernetes events and not doing the other half, then I think you're missing the whole point of it. Is that a hot take?
No. Yeah, it's a good one though.
And this is one of my bigger spicy takes. Maybe I'll expand on this next week or 2 weeks from now. But if you join a job and you can't articulate what it is you do at that job and why, then yeah, it's a grift, or you're just going to get pushed around. I was at a dinner with somebody and they're like, oh, what do you do? And this guy's like, I do DevRel. He's like, okay, so what is that? He's like, oh, developer relations. No. But like, what do you do? And he couldn't answer the question. That's when you know it's a
problem.
Yeah. Anyways, that was very fun to see that broken out. I haven't seen the whole video. I'm going to go check that out. Again, all the links are in the description if you want to see it for yourself. And now we need to go spend some money. Dun, dun, dun. Tenable.
This one.
Oh, swapped it around.
I got Pixie first. I don't know how the order happened, but let's start with this one.
Okay.
Here.
Take it away.
Code security startup Pixie emerges from stealth. It didn't say what kind of money they have, but let's just assume they got some. You could probably have looked it up, but I didn't do that. AI-driven code hardening and vulnerability remediation. So they're definitely getting on the back of the AI. Awesome. I don't know where they decided to use this. This is the only photo they had. Less talking, more tacos. You know what that means. I don't know who Sarek Patel is. I'm sure it says below here. I know that Arshan is one of the founders of Contrast Security. So he already has I guess some insight. Let's see, co-founder Zach. I don't know. There it is. Chief Strategy Officer. Oh, wow. Okay, here we go. They're both from Contrast Security. Got it. So they already have insight into the AppSec game and understand that reducing noise and reachability is key, and that's what they've got. So they come out, and I heard about this not through news. I heard about this through friends of mine who worked at Contrast Security and said, have you seen the new just out of stealth from the founders of Contrast? So I looked up, I found it, using LLM assisted code models. They have started, I know this through conversation, they've started with Java because Java has the largest code base available to generate an LLM, and they're going from there. So interesting. I mean,
code hardening. So it's just going to go through your code and suggest changes / this is an insecure block of code.
maybe it's like a, like GitHub's Copilot. Maybe it's like a security-centric version of Copilot, right? It goes through, and as you're doing things, it just goes, no. This way. Here's the security right way to do this, not just the fastest, cleverest way.
Interesting.
If it works, cool. I think it's going to struggle with like code bases where there just isn't the quantity of code you need to make it happen. And there isn't enough secure examples because, as we know, LLM AI is garbage in, garbage out. If there's not enough good stuff in there, you really got to train it, and that's going to take some time and some expertise.
Yeah, I wonder if they can ship the LLMs. So they craft one and then they ship it and say, okay, pay us like $1,000, and then you run it locally and then you train it also as you're going through and it's highlighting. It's like, no, this is secure. We can ignore blocks like this. But again, it's always this issue with security. If you're enforcing a policy or moving things away, I need to know why it's getting moved away. And if I just say it's not relevant and then it doesn't highlight something that is extremely insecure, we have a problem. So it's a tough challenge.
You got it. It's and potentially dangerous. Yeah. Well, good luck. It sounds like a cool product.
On to Tenable. Tenable and Ermetic 265. Thoughts? Opinions?
I don't know if that's worth it or not, but Ermetic recently have come up a few times in my searches for information. Tenable acquired Curix, maybe just over a year ago. A fine establishment that I think at one point, both of us, maybe 2 years ago, were looking at their capabilities, and they did that to expand their cybersecurity posture. So I'm a little curious about why they're getting into Ermetic at the moment, specializing
It's interesting. They're out of Palo Alto, Series B funding, and they have 100 to 250 employees, apparently, when you look at Crunchbase.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good exit in the time that we're in.
Yeah, I think they're probably pretty happy about it. I mean, they talk about, I think of them as, as time. But not like everyone's using, delivering CNAP, which provides comprehensive contextual analysis and the hazards of combinations of privileged and vulnerable workloads. No, CNAP means we do everything. You don't just get to say it, but everybody does. So they're saying they deliver that. That's not a capability. KIME is a component under the umbrella here. So whoever wrote this doesn't know what they're talking about. But what do I know? But everyone claims it, and so they were just trying to advance their definition of what it is they're doing within their cloud security solution. I mean, Ermetic's okay, but they're one of those brands that exists and seems to just exist. So they were ripe for purchasing. They're not shining at the moment, but they probably bring technology that companies like Tenable need. So it seems like probably a good fit. In my very blunt perspective on it.
For sure. And then we have one more seed investment. This one came across my desk, 2.2 million seed round for a open source application platform for Kubernetes.
It seems cool. What does it do? Rig.dev.
That's a great question. Yes. In the description, all the links are there. There's an open source repository there. Talks about the features, getting started, the community contributions. My guess is it's an all-in-one platform that ships. So you have Kubernetes, but you need that layer on top to get started. And it gives you all of that. So if you go use OpenShift or Rancher, it is Kubernetes, but then all the other stuff on top, user management, authentication, database storage, etc. Right? My guess is instead of shipping Kubernetes with it, they're shipping the application layer with it.
Oh yeah, when you first brought this up, did you see synergy or comparisons with Acorn? Is that right?
Yeah. So people are moving away from managing Kubernetes and more to the application layer. You want an app development platform. You don't want to be screwing around with ingress and egress and all these dumb things in Kubernetes. I shouldn't say dumb things, but you get the picture. And so just being able to use something like Kubernetes open source locally and put a platform on top that comes with everything that's updated in sync so that the operations team doesn't necessarily need to go in and manage, all the other things. And also, if this shifts to something like Backstage, so not only do you have the operational aspects, but the developer platform too, that I think is extremely powerful for the average person. And Acorn obviously was trying to solve this. They just went all the way to the left. And then I think that it's operationalizing into Rancher and the Kubernetes environments. This to me is an operational play to try to get the middle companies that use Kubernetes but can't afford, let's say, the cloud resources or something like an OpenShift or
got it.
You know, those resources. So that's what I think the play is here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, 2.2 seems like a lot, but it isn't that much. So we'll see what happens. Probably a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and they actually went live with a functional product. It looks like it's crazy,
which is super weird. That's definitely not cybersecurity.
Yeah,
you get 20 million for nothing there.
All right, vulnerability time or cookie time.
Now, what starts with the letter C?
Update now. Google rushes to patch critical Chrome vulnerability, and you will all notice my Chrome does not say update. One of the few times I'm showing a major Chrome vulnerability while not being actively exploitable while showing it to you. And I couldn't figure out why that was, but I did a full laptop update forcibly by IT today. So that is why it's updated, not because I did anything smart. But yeah, Google rolled out out-of-band security patches, multiple CVEs actually, to do with the WebP image format that allowed for remote code execution or arbitrary code or potentially a crash. Probably, well, this is due to a buffer overflow, of course. Creating remote code execution via a heap buffer overflow is seriously hard work. Creating epic disruption, not that hard.
Yeah, this brings Google's 0-day count up to 4 this year. So they have the first 3 listed there, but
that's not too bad. It's been a long year. It's not like it's January. That would be January 2nd for Microsoft.
Yes. The best thing about Chrome is they made the update process a lot simpler now. I remember when it used to click and it would take a while, and now it's like you click, it brings all the web pages right back up extremely quickly. So it's hopefully that makes people actually update their browser.
Yeah, so go do it, because if you're wondering how does this work, you probably notice when you're on certain pages and you right click and you want to save an image, it saves it. You think you're going to get a PNG or a JPEG and you get a totally useless WebP format because it's so much more efficient, because that's where the problem is. It's a, and I'll say relatively new format, but relatively unfamiliar to the average user. But there's a flaw in the WebP image format. So there we go.
Yeah, always update your browser. And then the last one, which is relevant to very few people, if any, that watch this show, a Go update.
I think, given that we're in cloud native, telling people to make sure their Go versions are updated is actually pretty critical, because there is several serious vulnerabilities in Go that were announced this week or late last week, and they're saying definitely go upgrade your Go. They're not critical, but they're high, and they do have examples of how they can be leveraged to create cross-site scripting attacks within Go applications. I think this is important. If you're using Go, get on it.
Definitely. Yes, there's just a security fix, which you don't see that often in Go. So pretty cool. All right, now for tool time, we were supposed to do Bombshell. Instead, I'm doing Topaz. Pretty cool little tool. Let's check it out.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Yes, I'm going to share my entire screen for the first time in a while. I normally don't do this because I don't trust y'all, but we're going to get into this. Steve, get out of here. There we go. All right, and let's make this a little bit more readable. What do you think? All right, Topaz. So this came across my desk because of the CNCF landscape. So Topaz is in the CNCF landscape. It'll make sense why when I dig into it, but it is I want to say niche open source opportunity. We were talking about comparables that we find in, we'll leave you for you to decide. So an introduction, it uses OPA as its decision engine and provides a built-in directory that implements Google's Zanzibar data model. For those who speak English, but also like photos, this is a good example of what's happening. So Topaz has an authorizer and RBAC controls built in. So we talk about the policy, and basically what we're doing is we're giving applications certifications so that they can reach a directory in the back. And we can have, let's say, multiple applications in the front that have multiple different development teams. We give them each unique signatures. They can go and ask the authorizer, do I have access to update the database in this way? It will check the policy configuration. It will then output a decision log and save it so that we see why and what happened in the back end, if there was an update or anything like that. And you can craft policies around that. So, let's say you create a certification, and with this one, you can only do read only. And then you give that to certain development teams that you only trust. And then you'll be able to triage and use that. Now, this has been around for a while, but with microservices, I think this is extremely useful. Right, because being able to do this at scale in Kubernetes or with Docker is a different challenge. So I think that that's the niche for this one. Now, biggest issue I have with it is your demo app doesn't work. Come on, Topaz crew. You're going to give me an app, but then it doesn't work. What is this? So Topaz, I got up and running just fine. In fact, the getting started guide is extremely easy. The setup, you can install it with Brew, you can install it with Go. So I have this all going, and I apparently need to start up Docker in order to do this.
Not the first time a demo app and the instructions has failed for us, though.
Yeah, no kidding. So as you can see, it's really easy. You install it with Brew, do Topaz install, and the best part about it is it uses a container. So, which is the way everything should be shipped. Like, I shouldn't have to go and configure my libraries in the background of Go and Python in order to do this. So great. You can use the command line to configure a policy. So this one is a readback policy, and I'll show you after, but it's basically for API for a request that comes in, and you can update it. So now there's a policy that Topaz in the authentication pod setup, whatever they want to call it, checks. So for example, I'm going to pass these objects in. Now these are certifications. Download and run extremely quickly. If I do like a Topaz, I don't want to import the entire directory. Let's go into Topaz directory. Oh, cd Topaz. Do that. Oh yeah. Now it should be running. There we go. So imports the object permissions, everything like that. Pretty smooth. I can even issue an API call to it because this is a container, if you remember. So if I run it, there, it's up and running. You can issue a query to it. And now we want to set up the gRPC endpoints. So this is your authentication, your gRPC, to make sure that all the requests are certified and handled properly. Now I'm going to create another shell so that this works. And if I zoom out and pull this tab over, sorry about this. This is not the cleanest demo I've ever done, but if I do this and pull this over, you can see there's the gRPC web UI. Now I'm going to create another one and pull the grp curl utility. Why it likes this web page instead of this one, I have no clue, but I'm going to bring these over so that you can see them both. Cool. With me so far?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, where it gets hairy is we want to run Topaz with a sample policy. So I did Node.js, Go, Flask, whatever you want, but it runs a git clone. So I'm like, why isn't this just a container? If you want to show a microservices demo, why don't you do container, talking to container, and then some sort of, hey, you can't do this in the middle. They don't do that. So it is a little bit annoying. I did all this. I created an environment file. If I want to run the pip environment, it will show up. So if I do this, let's go into to do Python, run the pip environment, run Flask on development server. Yeah. Okay. So that's where I need to go. Localhost you're on that found.
Right.
Right. So then I dug into it a little bit and I'm like, okay, well, maybe the path just isn't set up. And so if you look into the code, there is a to-dos. And this shows up.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not a nothing.
Yeah.
It's
so
a list of not the list of nothing that because you haven't got any to-dos in there, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if it's, my network settings or something like that that's going on. But you see, I can see the requests coming in the Python app.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's working.
Yeah, 200.
It's just
So,
the
yeah, that
application
works.
is not really showing up the way it should. And if I go, sorry for all the back and forth, to the web app, the sample web app, what you're supposed to see is this login screen. And you have like an admin, rick@thecitadel.com, a very secret password. Nice job. You can update the to-dos if you're logged in, but because of the policy, so we can see since Morty is the only editor, he won't be able to delete a to-do item as he did not create it. To test this, mark one of Morty's to-do items as done. And then attempt to delete one of Rick's to-do items before you create it. You should see the following error. So 403 forbidden. So you can't, because of the authorization between the two, because you've set up two users with two separate certificates, one can do an update and one cannot do the other update.
Okay. I mean, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you look at like the Python and just go, well, I don't even see where there would be a web app.
Yeah. So if app.python is the typical spot, and normally you see some sort of home directory set up. I didn't see one here. So I see a main port 3001. This is all good. But see, I see an app route, users, to-dos, to-dos. But I don't see any home directory here. Yeah. Which I think is the major issue.
Well, how
and
does
it was like this. Sorry, I did this in Go and on Node using Yarn.
Oh,
Flash.
You did all of them.
Same result on all of them. So I'm wondering if it's my computer, something that is screwed up. If anyone wants to try it out, let me know if you figured it out. I would love to test this out. But overall, app cool concept, applicable to microservices. If you're gonna do a demo, my number one recommendation is to containerize it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, I got the gist of it. Even though if the app itself didn't work and the app doesn't look like it could work, there's that. But yes, nevertheless, maybe something they can take. Maybe we should tag him in a post. It's Acerto make this. I saw that Topaz then links to Acerto. Acerto is something that looks a little like I was gonna say Styra, or maybe actually Styra, but a little bit like Permit.io and
I was thinking
authentication authorization as a service.
Yeah. Salt security too, API security.
And Salt, because they're doing API, but they're generally doing permissions, authentication, authorization more importantly, using OPA. So that is kind of what Permit does, but also Styra, who created OPA, does that as well. But I don't know if they've done it quite the same way. I don't know. There's a Venn diagram with very slight non-overlap between some of these.
Yes, and I had to use this. I got this going pretty quickly in a couple hours because Bombshell bombed on me. It was not working well. It was compiled improper. I compiled it from source. I also downloaded the source code from Bombshell. CLI wasn't working. So this is, again, a warning. Don't test out new toys before important things.
If you're wondering what Bombshell is, just go to last week's episode or the episode 2 weeks ago. We featured it, as we often do within our general news, as an exciting new SBOM interrogation capability from ChainGuard, and Mike very generously promised to demonstrate it, and it didn't work. It bombed.
Yeah. So many puns. That's what happens when you come up with a name like Bombshell, right?
Yeah, I mean, it has to really go wrong for you not to even show the walkthrough like you just did with Topaz.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is it was so fresh. Some of the documentation was like, this will be filled out when you go on the GitHub. Like, this is very, very early alpha. And I always wonder, I understand why developers put it there, because they know that they're going to get an influx of questions about, hey, why is this here? Are you guys doing this? But it's not popular enough. So don't, like, I would just hide the file personally. Right?
Yeah.
Like focus on what it does, and then I don't have to go through random files to see like, oh, this isn't working how it's supposed to. Anyways, off on a tangent. If you have any suggestions about what we should do in 2 weeks for tool time, let us know. Steve's on the chopping block. I'll have the hot take. Maybe I'll make it spicier. Let us know if you disagree in the comments. Until next time, he's Steve Giguere. I'm Mike Foster. This is C9K. Thanks for joining.